Mr. Secretary, thanks for joining Inside California Politics again.
Thanks for having me again, Nikki.
Okay, so as you know, this is a crowded field in this race for governor that you are now a part of.
Yes.
In terms of the Democrats, what makes you different?
Look, I respect all of them, but I think right now California wants someone who knows how to deliver results, who can execute. I've spent the last 8 years executing, first as Attorney General for our state of California during the first Trump administration, where we had to protect many of our interests. I executed every time they challenged what we were doing. We went to court 120 times. We defended the state of California, most of the time winning. As Secretary of Health and Human Services, running one of the largest enterprises in the world with a budget 4 times the size of the state of California's. I don't think anyone can say that they've run an enterprise as big as I have, and successfully pulled us out of COVID. We are able to now negotiate, get lower drug prices from pharmaceutical companies. We were able to make sure that more Americans have coverage today for healthcare than ever in the history of the country, more than 300 million. So we had to deliver results. We did because we executed.
So if you were to become governor, Donald Trump would still be the president. You would face his administration again. When you were Attorney General, sued the administration, I think it was
120 times or so.
120 times, so you know the number. What would your approach be? Because we've seen this back and forth, and the rhetoric changed with Governor Newsom after the election, and then when the fires happened, he had to pivot and have a working relationship. So how would you thread that needle?
Well, for the most part, it's a working partnership, because you have to be in partnership with the largest government in the world, working with you and your 50 some odd county governments and local mayors. What you have to do is make sure that you're keeping close tabs of where the money's going and what types of authorities the federal government has that can help you. So, for example, natural disaster strikes. We're going to need the federal government, FEMA, to be there with us, as they were with the fires. Same time, if they try to deny us FEMA funding, we're going to fight like hell in court to make sure that we get our fair share, because nobody in the country provides more tax revenue to the federal treasury than do Californians. So we deserve to see that money come back to us.
Okay, so I want to ask you about Kamala Harris. That's the big question looming, as you know, in this race right now. Is she going to enter the race? There was some sentiment in the months leading up to this conversation that we're having right now that she would clear the field if she were to enter the race. That has subsided a bit. So I just want to ask you, if Kamala Harris enters the race, are you in this? Are you going to stay in it through the primary?
Yeah, it makes no difference to me who gets in. I'm in, period.
Through the primary?
All the way through. Okay. Not the primary. I'm in general because I expect to win.
Okay. Just wanted to get you on that. So in the last election, I want to talk about that for a minute. In terms of issues, we saw the state of California tick more to the right and how voters voted, especially on the ballot measures. When you were looking at this run for governor and drafting your platform, did you take any of that into consideration?
Well, you certainly want to make sure you understand what the public is telling you. I don't think they went to the right or to the left so much as they were telling us this isn't working. Business as usual won't do it. They wanted to shake things up. How else do you explain that they would vote for someone like Donald Trump? The problem, of course, is when they wanted to shake things up, and now what they're seeing is they're getting shaken up by the Trump administration. I believe people are saying, look, I want to be able to afford a dozen eggs. I don't want to pay $12 for a dozen eggs. I don't want to have to buy a house that's 40 miles away from where I work. I want to be able to afford daycare for my kids and not pay college tuition rates for that daycare. We need to get back into the business of making California affordable.
And specifically, I'm mentioning Prop 36, the minimum wage. I mean, all counties in California voted for a tough on crime measure. So that specifically, when you look at the message and what Californians want, is that something that's top of mind for you?
Absolutely. I voted for Prop 36. I think what it says, it was a well-intentioned measure that said we can't see the kind of crime where people are just rushing establishments, taking products, and committing these crimes that they don't end up being punished for. At the same time, they're saying, but at the same time, if you're doing this because you're on drugs or you have mental challenges, we want to help you. Balanced approach, that will work. And I think Californians are ready to make sure we have public safety and true criminal justice
And so I just want to drill down a little bit on 36 too, because this was something that the Democratic establishment in California, meaning the governor and leadership in the legislature, did not support. There were a couple of mayors out on their own who were really backing this, meaning Democratic mayors. I've had one on the show from San Jose a couple of times, Mayor Matt Mahan. Yes. And recently he told me he is concerned that the leadership in Sacramento may be slow to implement 36. And that's something that lawmakers on both sides of the aisle in the legislature have voiced concern about. So if you become governor, will you commit to fully implementing Prop 36?
Not just implementing, but implementing it quickly, because we have a lot of people on those streets who are perhaps committing crime, but who are in real trouble, drugs, mental health. And what we don't want is to let them become criminals because of their circumstance as drug addicts or as folks who need mental health services.
So I want to ask you, you mentioned people that may need assistance, maybe dealing with addiction, battling that. And a lot of that is weaved into the homelessness crisis that we're dealing with in the state. This past week, there was an audit. The state audit showed that California cannot track where the money's going, what's working, what's not working. $24 billion the state has spent, and the problem isn't getting any better. The blame game happens, the state blames local government, vice versa. When you see something like that, when you hear a number like that, if you were governor right now and this report came out, what would you do?
I would do what I did as Attorney General for California. I'd go after those who aren't accountable, who took money and didn't use it the right way. We would have to go after those who are using Medicaid dollars fraudulently, and we'd have to go back and yank those dollars back from those providers who were trying to game the system. And so I would do the same thing as governor. I would demand accountability from anyone who's expecting to get a state taxpayer dollar.
Do you feel like there are people that are getting rich off this? Do you feel like there's fraud happening right now? It kind of sounds like that's what you're alluding to.
Look, if there's a lot of money we can't account for to the tune of millions or billions of dollars, someone's got it, and it's in the pockets of the wrong people, because what we're trying to do is help people who are on the streets, not line people's pockets with money they don't deserve.
Should the state cut off funding right now? I mean, what do you think should happen?
Well, we need to use the money appropriately. We do have a homelessness issue in California. We have to make sure we're getting people into appropriate housing. By the way, my focus would be on making sure more people don't lose their homes. I want to make sure folks like my parents, a construction worker and a clerical worker, don't find themselves in a situation where it's tough to pay their mortgage or to pay their rent. I want them to stay housed. So I'm going to do everything I can to make sure those who are working hard, paying taxes, doing things the right way, don't become homeless. I also want to help those who are homeless work with the local governments to make sure we deal with those who are on the streets. But I don't want to see anyone who's working hard ever believe they're going to join the ranks of homeless.
Okay, so let's talk about Medi-Cal. That is a big story over the past couple of weeks. The governor has asked for a loan, saying that the program is essentially running out of money. Republicans are accusing the governor of making this expansion of health care to undocumented workers, and this is to blame for the reason the state doesn't have the money anymore. So this is your background in healthcare, running HHS. Number one, should undocumented Californians have health care, in your opinion?
Yeah, and Nikki, let me answer it in two ways, because you're really mixing two different issues here. You're dealing with healthcare, and you're dealing with immigration. We can deal with healthcare as a state. We can't deal with immigration directly, because that's a federal issue. And so we're sort of strapped by what the federal government does. Healthcare, I want to see every Californian. You're working, you're paying taxes. I want you to have access to healthcare, good healthcare. I will do everything I can to make sure that you have the care that you need. If you're vulnerable, if you're infirm, if you're elderly, I'm not going to leave you on the streets. Healthcare should be there for everyone. And by the way, even if we don't provide them access to insurance, they're still going to use the health system, and it's still going to cost us as taxpayers dollars, because we don't turn people away at the emergency room. So it's going to cost us. So better we do. My mom used to say, mejor prevenir que remediar. Better to prevent than to remediate. I'm going to make sure we prevent people not having access to the care they need, so they have to wait till it's so bad they go use the emergency room, which costs so much more. Now, immigration. Nikki, you and I know that the reason we've got this problem is because Congress hasn't gotten off its stuff to fix a broken immigration system. If they were to just fix the broken immigration system, we'd be able to figure out who is in this country and whether or not they deserve a chance to stay. If you find out that you don't deserve a chance to stay, then you're deported. You don't deserve to stay simply because you want to. But if you've been here for 20 years working, paying taxes, doing things the right way, we should have a path for you to get right. And if you get right, then that includes having access to the health care you've probably already been paying for through your taxes.
But that's not the situation we're in right now. The Medi-Cal is struggling, and should the governor have made this move to provide undocumented Californians with health care if the state can't afford it?
Yeah, I'd love to see the numbers of why they're saying there's an imbalance, but what I will tell you is this. Those undocumented workers who are working hard, probably paying taxes as well, I'm not interested in kicking them out of a system that finally gave them access to basic health care. I am interested in making sure as governor, we balance our budget. We have no choice but to balance our budget under the Constitution of our state. And so I will look at the numbers, but please don't believe that the first thing I'm going to do is kick someone off of health care to try to balance the numbers. I want to figure out what happened with the money before I tell someone, we're not giving you access to health care, even though you work for this state, even though you pay taxes in this state, even though you've been building this state. My dad was a construction worker. He built a lot of California. I don't want anyone telling my father, you don't deserve health care simply because we can't track the numbers well on this other end.
You know the boom and bust of the California economy and how that affects the budget. So the LAO has said that we're looking at deficits in the years to come. If you become governor, is there something specific that you see right now as you're looking at everything and surveying things from 30,000 feet? Okay, this is where we could potentially make a cut, maybe trim something here. Is there anything specific that you can articulate?
What I will tell you is that it's clear that we have to take a close look at the way we collect revenue and the way we send out the revenue through our spending.
Okay.
And before we start talking about changing the tax system itself, let's figure out where we're spending the money. Can I give you a specific program that California is working on? I could tell you about some of the programs that I've heard about on the healthcare side, but I can't give you the specific number or the specific program that I would change because I've not had a chance to be there.
Okay.
As Secretary of HHS, I work closely with the Newsom administration to try to make sure that what they were doing with Medicaid, which is Medi-Cal here, would work. And so one of the things that we would look closely at is how is our healthcare system working? Where can we make some changes so we could have the dollars we need to provide healthcare, but also balance our budget?
So when you became Attorney General of California, appointed by Governor Jerry Brown, first Latino to serve as California Attorney General, also first Latino to serve as HHS Secretary. I want to get that in too. I want to get you to react to some remarks of his. We had a conversation last year and we were talking about the legislature, and there was a call from the current speaker about the number of bills that are introduced, and he lowered the threshold from 50 to 35, saying Californians sent us a message in this last election. They're not happy with the way the state is going, the direction that it's going, and we need to listen to that. So let's listen to Governor Brown. Do you think lawmakers were allowed to introduce too many bills and that cutting that back is better?
Without question, I'd go way below 35. I'd go 5, maybe. 5.
5 bills.
Well, what we have, let me just give you an example. The education code is about 13 volumes, depending upon how it's being published. There are 10,000 separate legal provisions in the California Education Code, all coercive prescriptions telling administrators and teachers what to do and what not to do. I mean, it's insane. There are too many laws. Now, I signed myself probably 16,000, and what is not easily appreciated, when you sign a law, you often spawn a series of regulations. And if you think of our society as a caught up in a dense thicket of regulatory coercion, you can understand people say, wow, we got enough of that. So let's slow it down. There are too many laws.
Okay, what do you say to the former governor's comments that California has too many laws?
Yeah, I think he's right. We are not short on policy in California. We always have some great ideas, but you have to be able to implement them, execute. Is that what I said before, Nikki? You learn real quickly when you're the CEO. You got to execute. So it's great that you're throwing all these great ideas my way, but if you don't give me a chance to implement the last idea you put in front of me, it's going to be tough for me to get to this new idea. So I think the governor is right in the sense that let's slow down, let's take a look. take a breath. The public, the voters told us, take a breath and implement a public policy on public safety. No one wants to be just punishment, but we want safety. And essentially what Prop 36 was, a statement by the public, the voters saying, take a breath.
Governor Newsom is termed out, which is why this seat is going to become available. What is something that you would do different than he's doing right now?
I know we're facing an issue with seismic safety, which all of us hope that the big one never comes and we're not anywhere close to where it hits. Hospitals are in deadly fear of not so much the earthquake, but the laws that require them to address a potential earthquake. They're spending a great deal of money to be ready to be retrofitted, and they have requirements that are coming really close down the road. And they're essentially signaling that while they've done the work to retrofit and make these facilities safe, they're not going to be able to meet the target for 2030 for some of the other requirements beyond the safety. And they're looking for some leadership so that they know what they can do. One of the things you learn as a CEO is the most important work you can do is based on predictability. If there's no certainty on your path, think of these tariffs that are being imposed, and now businesses just don't know how to plan at all because the Trump administration is yanking tariffs, imposing tariffs, and all the rest. Predictability is what you want to see. Hospitals are no different. They want to have a predictable path. They're willing to invest to make their facilities as safe as possible and up to date with the codes, but they're saying this deadline of 2030 is one they can't meet. We should sit down and work with them right now in 2025 to resolve what otherwise might be a calamity in 2030.
Do you think he's solely focused on the job? And I asked this question because I had former Defense Secretary Leon Panetta on the show, and I asked him about the future of Kamala Harris. Should she run? Would he support that? Should she run for president? He said, I'm not going to comment on that, but the next governor of California needs to be focusing on that job. And right now the governor is receiving criticism for podcasting and focusing on national issues. If you were to become governor, that's going to be your full-time job. Do you think that there is a vacuum right now currently in that position?
I'm not going to go there, but
Okay.
I will answer this question. I was in a great job as Attorney General. I knew that if I wanted to be Secretary of HHS, Health and Human Services, I would have to leave all the good work I was doing as AG. And I did. I understood that as Secretary of HHS, I could not engage in politics to talk about what the future would be in terms of the next governor. So I had to hold off until I left the position to really give thought as to whether or not I would jump in. But once I jumped in, I made it clear. My focus for the next year and a half, 2 years, is going to be 150% to be able to lead this state out of this affordability crisis and to make decisions, to execute in ways that show that we're going to get results. Because I think people are hungry for something that will shake the place up without shaking them up.
Focused on one job.
One job.
Okay. So I want to ask you about the Latino vote, because it went more red. What is the Democratic Party doing, and what would you like to see done to reach out to those voters?
Yeah, and again, I don't think it was so much red or blue. I think it was, this isn't working for me. I'm not feeling, we're hearing that the United States is the country with the best economy right now, that we got out of COVID and economically we're doing well. And they're saying, how come I don't feel it? I see Elon Musk is making a ton of money. And even through, he's got he's got probably more welfare coming from the federal government than anybody else because he's got all these contracts and all these grants. But they're saying, what about me? What about me? And I think what you're hearing, whether it's a Latino voter in California or a non-Latino voter, is, what about me? Again, that construction and clerical worker, are they making inroads? Are they able to buy that home? Can they send their kids to college or the military? That's what people want to see. And if they don't see it in the current leadership, D or R, red or blue, they're going to look elsewhere. And that's the shakeup.
But just to harken back on something that the current governor said, the Democratic brand is toxic right now. Do you see it that way? Do you feel like voters see the Democratic brand as toxic and not really figuring out how to message to people that feel left behind?
I'm a proud Democrat. I believe in what the Democratic philosophy has been, which is you help those who are at the bottom working hard to lift everybody up. And if you start from the grassroots and you work up, you do well, because it's what gave us the greatest country in the world in the 1940s and 50s coming out of World War II was the fact that we let a whole bunch of GIs come home, buy a home, get their education with the GI Bill, and then become the middle class. And we created the largest middle class. Why? Not because we left the wealthy with all the resources to just continue to make more money. No, we made sure that all those folks who fought for this country had a chance to now build their own life. I want to build. And I think we build best when we do it with the folks who work with their hands, with their brain, but they work. And I want to reward work again.
You, in your campaign video, you said you want to rebuild the California dream.
Yes.
So I want to end here. When you decided to run for this position, did you reach out to anybody? Who do you reach out to for advice?
So, I mean, I've been doing public policy, public work as a public servant, politics since the early 1990s. Every step of the way. The first time I decided to run in 1990, my wife and I were doing dishes, and I said to her, I was approached, folks are asking if I would run for the state assembly here in California, and she was the first person I asked. And when I got the green light from her, I then started talking to others. Yeah, and it was the same with this. Whether it was the first position in 1990 or today, she's been my strongest partner and supporter. And if she gives me the green light, then anything is possible.
Mr. Secretary, current candidate for governor, we appreciate you joining us here on Inside California Politics. Have to point out that when we launched our show statewide in 2024, you were our very first guest to help us launch the show, so we appreciate it.
Success.
Yeah. We look forward to having you back, and stay safe out there on the campaign trail.
Thank you.